Thank you, everyone, so much. It's a difficult act to follow, but I'm honored to be on stage with these visionaries and legends who you all are here to see. I guess I'll start off just by saying that censorship is rooted in fear. Fear that the free flow of information and transactions could be a threat to the power structures, could append them. And it's ultimately rooted in the fear that some truth could be inconvenient to those in power. And what are they so afraid of? So we're going to be discussing the implications of censorship today because we're at an interesting inflection point with technology, right? In some ways it makes it much easier to censor than it ever did, but through decentralized technologies like Bitcoin, it also makes it easier to escape that. And I'll just share a personal story. The first time I experienced censorship was in my journalism career very early on. After my parents suffered from the great financial crisis, lost everything, I decided to hold the man accountable, and I pursued stories chasing public corruption, and sometimes I was told that story cannot run. Why? Because someone too powerful was too close to the network, and I was really disappointed because I felt like that's not journalism. And I've seen it more and more throughout my career. So the first question I'll start with is just, the three of you are global citizens, world travelers. What are your experiences with witnessing censorship today, and how does Bitcoin fix this?
Okay, well, obviously censorship's been around for a very, very long time, way before we had any sort of electronic mediums, but it's gotten much more sophisticated today, and I think it's just worth putting out there that the Chinese Communist Party has advanced a way of censorship that is so beyond what most people here might even realize. They have real-time imagery censorship. So for example, in Chinese, the way to say Tiananmen Square is 6-4. It's called like the 6-4 incident, June 4th, basically. And if you send a message on any Chinese platform around that time of year, or even at any time of year, with, like, let's say 6 flower petals and then 4 leaves, it gets immediately censored. That's how sophisticated the censorship is that they have there. And that's where we're all going unless we fight back and stop it. And I think the connection to Bitcoin starts in the cypherpunk movement before Bitcoin, when people in the 1980s realized where we were going. And they saw the great hope of the internet, that it could connect all of us, right? This is what Hal Finney saw when he started working on PGP. He was so excited about the potential for the internet. But he also realized the flip side, that this could be this great system of control. And they realized, the cypherpunks, that we had to write code and we had to seize our freedoms and ask for forgiveness later. And that's what's going to be required to defeat this censorship machine that's now growing all around us. Whether it be, you know, sort of subtle censorship like we see maybe in the West, or this crazy overt censorship that we see in the world's largest country, in China, where it happens real time and creates a state of fear that is essentially almost impossible to overcome.
Yeah, so I love what you just said about the cypherpunks creating this movement to where we are today, just fight back, because it's so important. And they saw this far before I saw this. But it's easy to think you live in a free market, and you do not live in a free market. Nobody does. And if you understand, and some live in versions of free markets that are more than others, but all of those have externalities. There is no inflation in a free market. The market goes the other way. So the truth is, you live in a control system, and that control system has to get worse. And that creeping control system to be able to keep you in control, because you wouldn't choose it. And the irony is, everybody is making that control system stronger by all of their actions fighting within the control system. And that's what Bitcoin gives us, an ability to escape that control system and build a new parallel system outside of it that then more and more people start to see and they move over. But when you watch this, when you think about where AI is going and what the productivity would give us if we let it flow to us instead of being captured by us, it's actually really simple to see. You live in a control system where all of these technologies are used to control you more, instead of being in service to you. And so that's just where we are, and thank God for Bitcoin.
Sorry, and the question is, what is my experience with it?
Witnessing censorship and...
Witnessing censorship, okay. I guess the thing that I experienced a lot in my former life is not necessarily that's really talked about a lot, but just the power of incentives and the incentives of being a company, being a public company, and growing at all costs, having a business model that has to do with advertisers and these single points of failure that you have various parties, whether it be advertisers or government entities or employees or users who demand certain outcomes, and it's very, very hard to move away from those outcomes when you have a single point of failure with people like myself. If you can remove those single points of failure and you can distribute the agency of what people are able to see and not put it all into, for instance, one algorithm or one company or one service or a decision in the form of one person who has to make money or grow a company, you have a chance to avoid these things in countries that are predominantly freer than a number of the countries that Alex mentioned. But these are very complex systems that can only be solved, I think, with better technology and technology that enables, well, that removes those single points of failure and removes the human error from this. And I think we have them. We have them in Bitcoin, although it's being challenged every single day. And we need to look constantly for single points of failure, including companies that get into it, including massive investors that get into the space, including people who don't want to continue to develop the privacy models and don't want to continue to develop the anti-censorship models. We need it in social media with things like Nostr. It's one such solution. There will probably be many more. But the fact that it exists is important because, again, it doesn't have one single point of failure. It doesn't have a CEO that can be called to Congress. It doesn't have a person that can be assassinated for doing something that they believe in. It's actually distributed across thousands, if not millions, if not billions of people instead. And that's the hope. So I think these systems exist and the technology exists today where we can actually build them and correct a bunch of the issues we had in the past from a corporate perspective.
Well, I know several of you are really passionate about Nostr. A lot of people here on there. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges, though, with a decentralized network like that and how it has to compete with the network effect of the existing monopolies and tech companies, right? I mean, how do we move everyone into this parallel system that you talk about, Jeff, when the other one has so much power and especially the numbers?
I think people are talking about Nostr the same way people talked about Bitcoin 10 years ago. Like, oh, there's not enough people there, it's not going to do this. And there was a small group that's pushing this forward and in advancing the technology. That ecosystem is growing incredibly. And it's, what ends up happening typically in times of change like this is the first phase of business essentially copies the last phase of business. And so there's a whole bunch of, I'm going to create a Twitter clone, I'm going to create this clone, but the next phase of business takes Bitcoin, Fediment, Nostr, and creates something that we can't even imagine today. And that brings way more people on. So that's going to happen and it's going to create so much value for people that people are just going to naturally go there because it's creating so much value. The other thing that's pushing that value is the more and more people that see the censorship and what's happening in the existing system. And there's a bunch of people that believe that Twitter is now free speech. It cannot be under a system that will look like this. It can't be. It has to be controlled. And so as people see that they can spend all of their time building their audiences on a centralized structure that then could get, they could be deplatformed immediately, more people are going to see this, and more people are going to build to the open standard. So this isn't maybe going to happen. This is happening. And some of the people that are on Nostr, and Jack, you're really early on it and funding the ecosystem, which is incredible. They're just living in the future already. They're seeing this play out, and it's an incredible spot.
Can I just ask a question? I think all that's correct, but I think ultimately it's just a decision. It's a decision that you make. And can I just by a show of hands, like, honestly, how many people have ever used Nostr or any decentralized social network? All right, that's impressive. Now, how many use it on a weekly basis? Better? Okay. How many use it exclusively? Impressive. That's so impressive. Okay. Oh, I see Will and Vanessa over there. Damas. So I think it's really a decision. It's not just a matter of like developers coming to it and building for it. It's a matter of people using it. And the trick about Twitter, and the reason it became what it became, and in many ways still is because we started with something super, super simple, and it felt like a protocol. It felt like an API. And it was the developers, because our API was so open, it was the developers who really made it what it was. But more important than the developers, it was the people using it every single day that came up with all this syntax that we did not plan, we did not design for. Like, we never designed for the @ symbol in front of a name. We never designed for the hashtag in front of a keyword. We never designed for the retweet. That was Tim O'Reilly from O'Reilly Books, believe it or not. All these things were actually created by people who are not developers. They found this thing, they started using it in weird ways, and we built around it. We supported it, and it scaled like crazy, and then more and more people came. So even if you're not a developer and you believe in the concepts and the philosophies behind Bitcoin, and you truly believe in anti-censorship, and you truly believe in freedom technology, then you have to show it. And you have to be there, you have to be present, and you have to use it every day, and you have to put up with all the warts that exist in it right now, and you have to help address them and fix it. It's the only way it's going to take hold. It's not just going to be a bunch of developers doing things because it's fun. It has to be people like really testing it and wanting it to exist and wanting this to be an answer against corporate media of all sorts, inclusive of social media, because it just doesn't present the answers, no matter how great Elon is. And I love the guy, and I also have a complicated relationship, but I love him. He's a single point of failure. I hope that Twitter eventually, or X eventually, uses Nostr because it takes so much liability away from what they have to do. They can be an interface on top of it and still truly be free speech, because nothing can take it down, not even the individual that wrote it, because you can't delete right now. But the fact that that property exists is what we need in media, and it's what we need in money as well. But it's a decision. Do you want to use it or not? Do you want this to exist or not? And if you do, then use it.
Beste belegger, als we elkaar nog niet kennen, wordt het tijd.
Just to build on that, if you think about what would a world look like without censorship, it would be your ability to connect with and support anyone in the world at any time, and no one could stop you. And what's really interesting is we've been building technology, open source technology, that is getting us there. And really, step one was, in my opinion, if you think about political activism, how we can actually change society, and being able to do it without someone stopping you, I think Bitcoin was the first step. And we saw this very early on in 2011 when WikiLeaks posted a Bitcoin address to their Twitter account. And this was at a time when the US government, the most powerful government in the world, had stopped every other way for you to donate funds to keep WikiLeaks going on its mission to expose corruption and expose war and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you started to see it. You started to see, okay, we have part of the infrastructure here. Anyone in the world can send money to that address, right? Okay, there were problems with it, obviously. There were privacy issues. There were other issues involved. Twitter was ultimately still a totally centralized product. It could have, Twitter folks could have shut that down if they had been forced to, et cetera. But you started to see the promise, right? Okay, now you fast forward to today, and you have Nostr, and you can think about movements and communities and content creators who have these profiles on Nostr, and through integrations like people like Will and many others have made, I mean, now you can just stream value to these folks, and nobody can stop you. And it's done in a way where it's actually really even hard to see who's streaming the money and who are they, and it's just breaking this whole system of control. So I'm very optimistic about the future of this technology. It's true that like the censorship and AI machine is moving very quickly, and it's really scary what they've been able to do, not just in China, but everywhere in the West. I mean, if you think about what happens when you buy something in a store, it just gets that data on your credit card, gets immediately sold to hundreds and thousands of third parties, and then you get hit with advertisements seconds later for similar items. That infrastructure is actually quite terrifying. But we can break that by using money that is not a credit, it's an asset that's not attached to your identity, and it can go directly to people and to movements, and no one can stop it. So I think despite the darkness, the future is very bright on this.
Well, I want to pull on that thread a little bit because I know that a lot of the companies that pitched yesterday at Pitch Day were Nostr, right? People want to build in this ecosystem. What is a sustainable economic model for this to last and to onboard people into the future for decentralized platforms?
I think that's Jack.
I think it still has to be figured out. We have a lot of experimentation to do. Like Will is experimenting, Primo is experimenting, Pablo is experimenting with 1,000 different things at once. Like all these things, like one of them will land, and one of them will match. But the fact that it's so adjacent to Bitcoin, I think there's something there, and I think we'll find something that will make it more sustainable. But until that point, like we have these incredible grant organizations like OpenSats and Brink and others that are expanding beyond Bitcoin and looking towards Nostr and looking at like the underlying infrastructure that's needed around Bitcoin as well. And I fully believe that Nostr is a big part of that. And I think it's just a question of well, the beautiful thing about, I don't think we have this in Nostr today, well, we don't have it in Nostr, but the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is that anyone who contributes something positive to Bitcoin, it benefits everyone else who is working on Bitcoin. It's just an incredible property. Like anytime Jack does something with Strike, like we at Block benefit as well, and vice versa, hopefully. And it's really just an amazing virtuous cycle. And if we could find that for decentralized social media and for more of these protocols, maybe it is reliant entirely on Bitcoin, maybe there's something different, but the fact that you have this just like virtuous cycle where the more people contribute, the better it gets, and everyone gets better because of that, that's incredible. And I think it's there. It's just, we have to discover it. It's so early right now.
Highlighted.
So I think about this a lot, investing in this ecosystem. I think about this a lot. And I think it's a reflection of so many people caught in the fiat world instead of pricing from Bitcoin. And so if you price in Bitcoin, your prices will fall forever. Your prices will fall. So you're measuring the free market, and you're measuring exponential technology delivering service to you. And every person that's building onto that network is making that happen faster. Because what do we do as humans? We solve problems faster. So if money is not broken, it makes sense that that deflationary path would just make every human on this planet more abundant as a natural cause, and that's what's happening. So if you measure from Bitcoin instead of saying, oh, I'm going to convert my Bitcoin to fiat dollars and think it's going up, like everybody does, if you measure in Bitcoin, you'll see all prices will fall forever. And that has extraordinary implications on what we're talking about here, because it means to beat Bitcoin and invest in a company, you have to deliver companies that can grow on top of that. And how do they do that? they attract more Bitcoin on their balance sheets by creating really great organization and create value on top of that rail. And they price in Bitcoin and they think about in terms of Bitcoin, and they're making decisions to where can I beat the Bitcoin rate by providing more value. And so I suspect that there's businesses right now in Nostr that will be those businesses, but some of them are actually thinking in fiat terms where I have to scale a huge company to be able to deliver that, and you don't. The technology, it allows that to happen. It allows you to accrue more Bitcoin, and the model, if you deliver enough value to somebody, people will pay in sats. So I think the models are actually already nearing where they are. They just look so different than the models we're used to in the fiat world.
One other thing, it'd be interesting to hear what Jack has to say about this, but when you think about the incentives of media and free speech and institutions that exist where you pay them for news, right? What's been interesting is that the new age of censorship is in many ways financial censorship, right? First, it's direct. In many difficult political climates, if you're a journalistic outlet and you produce something that the government doesn't like, one of the first things to do is they freeze your bank account to prevent you from doing more of this. This is happening in India right now as we speak, for example. So that's kind of the obvious way. But the other more subtle ways, like let's say in America, obviously journalism is driven by advertising, which is sort of the way the internet went, right? And you know, your advertisers can have a lot of influence over you if they don't like what you're saying, and they can pull out.
That's how I had Censor Story.
Yeah, exactly. To your point, like, and that is also a different version of censorship. I want to be careful to distinguish state censorship from social censorship. They're different, but they're both, you know, things that happen. And if we want to keep the Overton window of acceptable thought as wide as possible, if we want to keep this window of, you know, free speech as wide as possible, then we're going to need a different, you know, revenue model for independent journalism than advertising. And what's interesting about Bitcoin and also stuff like Nostr is that you can start to envision a world where the people that benefit from the journalism can just more easily pay you directly. Like actually that friction of like, oh, I really love that article, but I'd have to go sign up for this magazine and I have to pay $29.99 a year and I have to go through this whole process. The idea that, oh, I just read that, I can just zap that person. I mean, that is an enormous amount of friction that's being cut out. And I know that the existing market doesn't want that, and that's why they're causing so much grief for our friends building, you know, Nostr protocols on the App Store. They don't want you to be able to directly donate to the causes you care about without taking a cut or to be in control. They don't want that. But I do think moving in that direction is really interesting. I don't know if that's something you...
Yeah, I mean, I think Nostr and Zaps are the largest at-scale experiment of Lightning in this model and like funding creators and actually like we truly have micropayments on the internet for content. Finally, like it exists, it works. People are receiving Zaps and buying food with it in places like Costa Rica where you have circular economies. It's working today. Bitcoin jungle, here in Madeira, it's working.
Een Lamborghini kopen, het wonen in een prachtige villa en het hebben...
So, I can literally have a great post, I can get some Zaps, and I can get a taco down the street. I mean, it's here. So, like, it exists, and it's pretty exciting to see that, like, people are building more and more towards this, and that, like, I've never found an easier way to introduce people to Bitcoin than through Nostr right now. Because as soon as they feel getting a Zap, they feel that, like, tangibility of it. It was like, in the early days of Twitter, we only existed on SMS, and when you got a tweet, your pocket would buzz because your phone would buzz because you got a message, and it just felt like alive. It felt like electricity. And to feel the same thing with Zaps, but literally electricity because they're called Zaps. And the fact that, like, you can put this back into the economy and back into the Nostrverse and have the circular economy online or offline is pretty magical, and again, it exists right now, so what are we waiting for? Why aren't we using it nonstop?
Well, I love what Jack said about this is all a choice, and we choose where we put our energy. We can focus it on the fiat world and give energy to what we want to change, or we can actually focus on building this new world, which I think everyone here is doing. I want to talk a little bit more about financial censorship because I think it's been surprising to see how much we've seen in the West. You know, obviously with the truckers in Canada, I know presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he said that was his orange pill moment, was when the trucker protest happened and bank accounts were frozen. It's been happening, it's commonplace in other countries. I just did an episode about that. And one thing that I've been talking about lately is it seems like we're in this chaos of the forces of freedom, Bitcoin being one of those forces and all of us, versus the forces of control who seem to have a lot of power, but by numbers I think they're pretty small. And I'm curious, how do you think this is going to play out? Because as inflation increases, it seems like governments want to close down the escape hatches, right? And in places where there is high inflation like Turkey and Lebanon and Argentina, we're seeing that they want to prevent people from leaving the debasing currency. They want to prevent you from going into gold or a stronger currency. So how do you think it's going to play out when the tendency for strong powers of control are to censor?
I think it's going to play out one person at a time, and we are in control. And when you realize that, Jack mentioned this, why if you're on Nostr every day or spending more time in Bitcoin, that's the decision that every single one of us have. And we look at other people, and we say, why are you yelling at the system so much? So think about what happens when people march down the street, break windows, turn over cars, light cars on fires and everything else, and then go back home to sleep. Where did the money come to fix all that stuff? And it came from their actions making the system stronger. And so when you're fighting within that system, when you're yelling at your tiny little divide, whether it's climate change or political party, you're actually strengthening that entire system over you. And this is something that was, I'll talk about it on Sunday, but this is something for me that I realized that probably long after Jack realized, but I was a hypocrite in Bitcoin because I had a hedge in Bitcoin, but I was spending all my energy in the existing system. And that was a really hard moment to realize that. And as soon as I shifted all of my energy into the new system, it was just abundance everywhere, and you guys are part of it. And so, I suspect that can't be stopped because more and more people are going to see it, and more and more people are doing the same journey that we all did. And they might be at step one of that journey, but they're all coming over eventually. And that every one of those people make the existing system weaker over them. There is no system of control if you don't believe it.
I would also just point to the power of open source code here because, look, if you didn't have Bitcoin, they could close all the exits, right? And they can't anymore. But they're going to try. And in that environment where things get really difficult, as we're seeing now with our friends in Nigeria and many other places, it gets pretty scary. And one of the most important things is that we have the infrastructure to have alternative news and alternative voices. You know, so for example, you could imagine a situation where, you know, there's high inflation in a particular country, and the government is trying to advance a particular narrative about why that's happening. And they are closing down or pressuring anyone who says something different that has an alternative explanation for what's happening. Now, with the rise of Substack and all kinds of other independent, web news outlets and places for people to share opinions, we've seen an explosion of really rich ideas from all different kinds of people that would never be in the mainstream media, and that's very valuable. But as long as they're centralized, they're still vulnerable. So that's why this financial infrastructure connected with communications infrastructure is so important. Like, you have to have, like, essentially a Substack that can't be shut down, and then it integrates with Bitcoin, and then if there's 1,000 of those, it will be completely impossible to stop people from telling the truth. But if you don't have that infrastructure, you can stop it. So the open source code piece is actually really vital here.
Just one quick thing. I think it's the inputs as well. We focus a lot on the outputs, but like going back to Nostr and Zaps, like you can literally get KYC free Bitcoin by starting a Nostr account, saying something amazing that people like, and people zapping you. Like, that didn't really exist before. And now it does. I mean, Bisq is amazing, but like this works immediately all over the world. And again, it is at scale and people can use it today. So as much as we focus on like the outputs and like whether it can be captured, getting into the system and getting through things like KYC, which is a very faulty system and doesn't work to reduce fraud, is really important to focus on as well.
Let's talk a little bit about the risk of censorship on the Bitcoin network. I know it's something that all of you are passionate about is decentralization of Bitcoin mining, obviously with Ocean. So talk about Bitcoin mining pools, because we've seen F2 pool has censored some transactions. I believe they're the third largest pool. So what are the risks there and what should people know?
Well, I'm just an investor in Ocean, but I think things like Ocean should exist. Like we should look at all the central points of failure in Bitcoin, and one of the singular points of failure is mining. Mining pools are highly concentrated into a very few. That wasn't always the case. Luke had one of the largest decentralized mining pools in the past, shut it down for some time and brought it back in the form of Ocean, and thank God for that. But that's not the only issue we have, and we have blocker focus on another issue we see, which is we're entirely dependent upon 2 companies out of China for all of our mining hardware right now, and that's just not going to scale. So we're building cash boards, and I hope that we will release them by the end of this year. It's important that we're not just selling them, but we're open sourcing everything as well, and we're enabling more people to build their own. We're working with innovative companies and companies like Gridless, who I think you may have seen today on one of these stages, I think the open source stage, who is building mining rigs in places like Kenya and giving power to the people where they had none before, and giving them in such a way that they can afford the power and do so at a discount. So I think it's really important that we have more choices within mining, within the hash boards, and that we can get down to a state where my space heater in my apartment could be mining Bitcoin and potentially pay for its own electricity. But the fact that like I can just choose to build that, and that the parts come from the United States as well, where we can trust the whole line, I think is really, really important for Bitcoin and securing the network over time.
Just 2 points, one on mining and one on KYC when it comes to protocol censorship. I mean, what's very clear is that there will be a lot of interest from authorities, governments, corporations to try and get people to use essentially custodial KYC Bitcoin, or Bitcoin IOUs, or Bitcoin credits, or Bitcoin ETFs, or whatever. There's going to be a lot of interest in that being Bitcoin instead of Bitcoin being freedom money, which is really what it is at its heart, which is peer-to-peer electronic cash. So I think one thing that's very important for us to just do right now, while we still can, while it's totally legal and fine in many societies, is build out peer-to-peer non-KYC Bitcoin infrastructure and networks. Like, this is so, so important. That's why we love supporting Bitcoin communities, circular economies. I mean, it's so, so vital. The second piece is on mining, and what's really interesting is that, yes, there's different levels here, right? You want to get the transaction ordering out of the hands of the pools and into the miners. But even the miners, you know, in a centralized system like in the United States can be coerced, right? So it is essential to do things like Stratum v2 to help decentralize mining, but it's not enough. What's really amazing is the stuff that Gridless is doing, because they're pioneering something that's going to be massive, and that's off-grid mining, which is going to take advantage of thousands of gigawatts of stranded and wasted energy all across the global south. And what's going to end up happening is that, and my friend Troy Cross pointed this out, that the last cycle, all the mining was driven by cheap capital. Wall Street was investing in Bitcoin miners, et cetera. The next cycle will be driven by access to cheap power. And there's so much cheap, wasted, stranded, orphaned power around the world. And the coolest part is, it's all going to be, a lot of this is going to be off-grid. And if you have enough of the network off-grid, then there is no big red button that they can press to turn you off. They can do that in the United States. If you're on grid and you're known and you're centralized, even if you're ordering the transactions and not a pool, they can still coerce you. But if enough of the network is off-grid, scattered across dozens of different countries that are political rivals with each other, then we're much safer. And the exciting part is it looks like we're going in that direction.
So if you just carry forward, if you carried forward what Alex said and you just say, why I'm very confident in this thing building out this way is because people like this, people like gridless, you already know what the risk is to centralize. And the Bitcoin community knows that, and so they're looking at all of these potential risks, and they're constantly attacking those risks. And Bitcoin is getting stronger as a result, and Nostr is getting stronger as a result, because we now know. We've peered behind the curtain. We know where a centralized society looks like, and so you have more and more people all over the world that now know, and they're creating solutions to be able to stop that.
All right, here's my last question. Who out here has thought something but ended up not sharing it and censored themselves? Are we censoring ourselves too much, and what is your advice for speaking more truth, especially in a world where maybe a lot of us disagree with some of the things we're seeing today?
Okay, I'll go first. Yeah, it's sometimes the censorship isn't just from the state, right? I'm fortunate enough to live in a country where I've never really felt afraid to say whatever I want. But a lot of my friends live in different countries and they face that fear. But I do feel sometimes afraid that if I say something, I'll get canceled, right? That's different. That's different from being persecuted or jailed. But, you know, that is very tricky, and I empathize with everybody out here everybody deals with this every day, you know, that they really feel like they want to say something and yet they're worried about, you know, what's going to happen. And I think you see this with a lot of political issues out there today. I think Palestine is a big one, and there's a whole bunch of other ones. And I think it's tough, but my suggestion is just say what you believe to be true and deal with the consequences later. I know that sounds easy. I know it's not, but I think that's what I try to do, but I don't know.
I try to take it to a higher level, and I try to talk from I know if the world looked at it as it is, and we were on broken money, and that broken money caused everybody to consider issues within the frame of the broken money, it would divide the world, and all of those people would be fighting, making that system stronger, and they would believe they were helping. And it would divide further and further and further on essentially a money that extracts human energy from humans. And so if the world looked like that and everybody was looking at it like that and they were so emotional that their side was right and the other side was wrong, I never play there because I know I'm not going to change their belief. That is their belief. I just try to think about it at a whole new level. What would the world look like if we're living on an honest ledger? And all of the work that we're doing on an honest ledger is flowing to all of us. And then it becomes really clear what's going to happen next. So for me, I just spend my time there.
I would say what not to do. Don't do it for the algorithm, because that's what it wants you to do. And that's what a lot of people are doing right now. And they're doing it for the headline. And they're doing it for the engagement. And it's empty, and it'll be seen as empty. It may feel good in the moment. It's not going to last. And I would say, when in doubt, ask a question instead.
That's great.
Can I just add to that? Jack's point is so important. You will slow down at a car crash. And why you slow down? Because it captures your attention. And that means car crashes online. The algorithm just naturally goes there because it sells more advertising. And there's a whole bunch of people feeding that algorithm with all of their work, making their own lives worse. And they think the world looks like that. They think everybody's divided. If you go out and meet people, like we are here, if you meet people in any place in the world, they all have the same hopes and dreams. And the world doesn't look like it does in the algorithm. It's just, and so you just nailed it.
Yeah, I love all of that. Before I found Bitcoin, I was in so many situations where I wanted to speak out, but I was afraid, and I didn't feel like I would find other people with similar values. And here, within Bitcoin and within this community, I have never felt more free. And we have these platforms like Nostr and these amazing technologies that allow us to be our most true individual selves. So thank you all so much. Jack Dorsey, Jeff Booth, Alex Gladstein, thank you guys for listening.
Thank you all.
Have a recording for you guys because otherwise I couldn't show you this. Now we are in maintenance. So please enjoy to the market opportunities. And here you see all the market opportunities. Make sure you reset this also, that you have the latest newest one. Here, USDT. You see USDT, USDT. Let's try this one. If this is working, USDT. And then put in 1,000. And then we go to USDC, USDCE. Yeah. Let's see if it's above the 1%. 0.5. Let's confirm. 0.95. Let's see if we can grab this and then see the commissions, the performance. Now it's buying the crypto with the flash loan, sending it from one exchange to the other. Transaction is completed. Website is refreshing. Let's see if we can do another one. And it was USDT. Let's put in 500. If we can do a 500 trade, submit, and we click here USDCE. Let's see if we can have another one in the same pair. You see 1.07. I say confirm, confirm. Waiting for the confirmation from MetaMask. Confirm. Now again, it's buying with the flash loan, the crypto on one exchange, send it to another exchange, selling it there, paying back the flash loan, and sending the profit. If it happens, you get a message. Or when it's not happening, yeah, transaction complete. So let's see if we cannot do another one. And you can see if you do smaller amounts, then it becomes bigger. Let's see if we can do another $100. Yeah, $100. Submit. And this USDCE. Let's see if the pair is still the same, because if you have a winning pair, you can do it over and over. 1.17% with $100. And you can see if the amounts are a little bit smaller, the percentages are most of the time bigger. And let's see if we can do after this one another $1,000 trade. Yes, transaction complete. Website is going to refresh the dep, and then we can do another trade. Let's do USDT again with the amount. Let's see if we can do another $1,000, and then submit, and we go back. USDCE. Let's see if it's still available, and then we can do no. Now it's on minus. You see, and even when it's now minus, when I click confirm, it gives you not profitable trade. So it's protected all the way, and you can see here in the 68 trades we now made $481 in profit, and that's really good. So let's see. You can also go to the transaction history.
Let's do some quick calculations. There's approximately 4 trades in 3 minutes. You witnessed it live. There's 20 times 3 minutes in an hour, which means 20 times 4 trades per hour, which is 80 times approximately an average of $10 profits per trade, which is approximately $800 per hour. Please listen up. Let's continue. Now let me tell you that it's totally okay to say no to whatever has been suggested, whatever you see in this video, and your life will stay exactly the same. Nothing will change. Yet, when you do say yes to opportunities like this, you may expect positive results in all levels and all areas of your life. Now, long story short, and to do some calls of action, you have been pitched in 10 minutes. And there's a couple of options here. You are able to say yes and show me your link and let's continue and I'm in. You're able to say no, but, and then all kinds of reasons, no time, no money, the cat is pregnant, whatever, and we'll help you. You can say maybe, then there's more video information below this video in the description, more video information, or be invited to our webinars, seminars, live streaming sessions, special events on and offline. And when you say, okay, I need help, then please contact the person that brought you to this 10-minute pitch and we'll help you, or contact me. And that's about it. So would it be okay to click links below this video, start right away, register for free, and then roam around and we'll help you set up this system on your mobile device or on your laptop, PC or wherever, or several devices. It's possible as well to do it parallel. And don't forget, all profits are being paid directly to your non-custodial wallet. Many wallet options in the near future for now, and it is the 3rd of March 2024. We are live. We're about to get our flash loan. That's a big story on itself. But anyway, you've seen it live now, and would it be okay to also hit a little thumbs up button underneath this YouTube video? Then this video will be ranked a little higher on YouTube and Google, for example. Then you'll do other people a favor. When you see a little share option underneath this video or somewhere on this page, share this video. Sharing is caring. Would it be okay to become a member of this channel? You'll do me a bigger favor than I do you. And please hit the little bell icon so you'll be notified whenever I or we upload a new video. Then you're always the first, and early birds do catch worms. When you see this on a page where you can leave your best email address plus mobile telephone number, please do so. We'll send you appropriate video information, and we won't spam you. You'll enter into an autoresponder system, and with a simple mouse click you're able to take yourself out of the system, so no codependency there. And that's it for now. Last but not least, stay grateful for the person that you would like to become, the circumstances that you would like to live in, and the material wealth that you would like to enjoy here now on earth. That's how you practice the law of attraction. And then I'll see you and yours on the inside, and definitely thanks to these marvelous opportunities, thanks to this fantastic, very unique, zero loss, zero owned collateral, flash loan AI arbitration crypto trading software protocol, I'll definitely see you on the most beautiful beaches, top resorts and top hotels in the world. I'll see you there.